everyone, and welcome. My name is Lada Kozachuk, and I'm a marketing specialist at Wilmac Technologies, and I'll be your moderator today. So this is the second session in our three-part WFM series, and today's webinar, Faster Call Response Start with Smarter Workforce Management, is designed for public safety professionals who are looking to understand the difference between basic scheduling and true workforce management, and how that distinction impacts outcomes like telecommunicators' wellness, call response times, and also overtime. So if you are with us for the session number 1, welcome back. If that's your first time joining us, that's totally fine. Each session is designed to stand on its own. So last session, we talked about wellness, specifically the connection between staffing, consistency, and visibility as it ties to telecommunicators' wellness. So today we're building on that and getting into something that affects every call your center handles and something they are measured on, response time. So today I'm joined by Steve McDonnell, Wilmac's President and CEO, and Charlie Snedden, Wilmac's Workforce Management Specialist. And before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. So today's session runs about 30 minutes and is being recorded. And we'll also share the recording with you afterwards. Also, please drop your questions in the chat as we go, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. And any we don't get to, we'll follow up with you after this session. So, all right, let's get into it. Steve, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Lada. Appreciate the introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Happy Telecommunicators Week as well. It's been a fun week. I hope everyone is enjoying it. We appreciate everyone's hard work. So before we jump into workforce management and give you a demo of our continuity product, I want to give everyone a quick background of Wilmac. I know we have some people who've been on the first webinar and some people we're currently working with. So I'll try to make this as quick as possible. But quick background on Wilmac. We have been working in the public safety industry for over 30 years. We are business partners with NICE, which I'm sure plenty of you guys know who they are. So we are a reseller, implementer, and support provider of NICE in basically every state in the Northeast United States and Southeast Canada. Well, we have roughly 300 public safety customers. So we have been in this industry for quite a while. Understand the people, understand the workflows, understand how a PSAP really works and is integral to society. Another part of being a NICE business partner is we do a lot in contact centers. And what we're going to talk about today is a workforce management platform. And that has been around in contact centers for probably 20, 30 years. In a contact center, it's table stakes. Everyone, any contact center over 20 people automatically has a workforce management platform. There's numerous different ones out there. And NICE has workforce management platforms, and Wilmac has implemented and deployed those and supported those for the past 15 to 20 years. So we have a ton of experience with this sort of product. And third, to tie it all together, we do a lot of work for the trading floors for NICE. Same sort of call recording they do on PSAPs. And probably 5-6 years ago, a couple customers came to us saying, hey, could NICE develop a product for us around data archiving? NICE didn't want anything to do with it. So Wilmac got into software development. And at that, and looking at it now, that product has over 80 customers at the enterprise level. So you're talking about Wells Fargo, TD Banks of the world. So a similar thing happened here. One of our largest customers, one of the largest PSAPs in North America, a current customer came to us with a request on scheduling and forecasting. We couldn't get NICE to do it, and lo and behold, we said we'll jump into it. We've done this before, and here we are, about a year since we've started developing the product, and we're excited to bring it to the market and show you guys. So before we jump into that, I think moving on to the next slide is a difference between scheduling and workforce management. And scheduling right now is something PSAPs do, and workforce management is something we're bringing to PSAP. So Charlie, I'll hand it off to you for this.
Absolutely, Steve. And just before we do that, you mentioned earlier on it was Call Takers Week, National Call Takers Week. What specifically did we do for our call takers that we work with?
We brought lunches and I believe a bunch of cookies did it and donuts, different deliveries to different PSAPs, but very exciting week, and we're continuing to do it today and tomorrow. And because of some of the bigger ones, they have so many deliveries. I think we're actually doing some stuff next week as well. So
Great.
Exciting.
Because the reason I ask about that, Steve, is that is something that I can use to measure the difference between scheduling and workforce management. So what I mean by that is workforce management allows you to plan for Wilmac coming into the PSAP center and giving out those lunches, those donuts, those cookies. But it also allows you to be able to be adaptive with regards to what's going on. Who can be released from the phone to go and grab a cookie or a donut? So what I'm really saying there is the manual scheduling that we talk about, manual scheduling, it could be overtime management, it could be schedule management, it could be vacation. Those are typically tools, Excel spreadsheets, maybe even pen and paper, which is very manual. And if somebody came into your call center tomorrow with those tools, you wouldn't be able to be reactive. Sorry, you would be very reactive and not adaptive to those donuts and those cookies that have come in. But using workforce management as a platform, something that is really automatic and taking away a lot of that manual effort, allows people to break for 5-10 minutes and grab a cookie, grab a coffee, grab a donut. And I think that's a really good example of what we mean by workforce management as a platform. It's very dynamic, allows for real-time adjustments, which your Excel spreadsheet doesn't allow you to do that. And the great thing behind all of that is that the forecasts that we produce, so workforce management as a platform allows you to create call volume forecasts, is data driven. So we understand the potential of the calls that are coming into the system against the schedule that we have within the environment. And that allows us then to look at things like compliance or fatigue risks. Now, surely if you're jacked up on sugar from the donuts, there might not be necessarily that little bit of fatigue risk that we were talking about. But if we're just looking at manual processes and spreadsheets, it doesn't really point that out. And the great thing about this is that, with the automatic vacation, the automatic overtime, the compliance around overtime, meal breaks, and also pay, improves the satisfaction that you have within the PSAP center. And all of that, workforce management then helps us to manage the retention of our call takers. So it's really something that gives us insight. So we also have the ability to have actionable reporting, and our supervisors have the accountability that you wouldn't necessarily have had on a manual Excel spreadsheet. So I'm hoping that gives us a good kind of insight, the difference between manual scheduling and what workforce management is a platform. What do you think of that, Steve?
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate that. I think the easiest way to understand the differences is scheduling is just a static tool, whether it's an Excel or a scheduler software. It's normally just a static tool. And as we all know, 911 centers are not static. Things change before your day even starts, and things will change 5 minutes into your day. So having a dynamic platform that adjusts and predicts while things are happening is the big difference.
Absolutely.
So great. So going into faster call response, obviously a huge thing in PSAPs. You guys have NENA standards. I think a lot of people hit those standards, get close to them. The danger when you're not hitting them tends to be when you have turnover. So we really truly believe this hits into that, and that the real response time problem isn't necessarily volume, it's actually attrition. So we kind of call it a flywheel of how this happens. But even if you have one burnout event, it doesn't just cost you the shift, it's going to cost you 2 to 4 months of recruiting. Sometimes you're having to hire 4, 5 people to eventually keep one. The training we've heard anywhere from 3 to 6, and then even at some of the larger places, 12 to 18 months. And that entire time, you're running short staff. So we don't think this is necessarily that's not a staffing gap. That's an actual response time problem that keeps compounding every single day until someone makes it through training and gets on the live floor. And what workforce management will do is break that cycle. We have consistent schedules, fair breaks, no more back-to-backs. People tend to stay when they feel comfortable and know what's going on. So by having this, you're going to get the right person answering the right call when that comes in. And with that, we will move it on to the demo, but a quick slide here, just our overall Continuity WFM is Continuity Workforce Management. It's the SaaS product we built for this. So it's a typical software platform, UI that Charlie will show you, that you can navigate. We get trained, we deploy engineers normally on site for a period of time to train and get it going. And then we also have built, and I think Charlie's going to dive into it a little bit, but we've built agentic AI into this. So think of it as a assistant on steroids, and that is Mac. And Mac has been built specifically for PSAPs. So all the knowledge around Mac is around PSAPs from all the experience we have, and we have multiple PSAPs that have helped us build this with the knowledge. Now, that being said, we all know that PSAPs are very different. And so when Mac is deployed, we have our forward deployed engineers really working with your team to customize it to your center, whether that's union rules that it has to stay in or workflows, it learns your center. And the longer it's being trained within your PSAP, the better it gets. And we keep it human in the loop, so you have to approve. It's not going to run on its own unless you approve it too. So it's super exciting. We're pumped. And with that, I'll hand it over to Charlie to share some of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to say, I love working with Mac. If I had Mac as an assistant in my workforce management team 10, 15 years ago, it would have made my life a lot easier, specifically on the reporting. And I'm hoping to show some of that today as well. But where I'm going to start on the demo is the schedule side of things. The reason I want to start here is because this allows me to show you the difference between a traditional contact center workforce management and a workforce management tool that's been designed specifically for the PSAP. And why I'm calling that out is just simply over here on the left-hand side, we've got this dispatch position 1. We scroll down, we've got call takers, and we've also got supervisors. Your traditional call center schedules people. Continuity workforce management schedules desks or stations, depending on which way you want to call it. And the typical thing that you see there, Steve, is that a dispatch desk would be populated or filled 24/7. And that's what we can see on this screen here. Dispatch desk number 1 starts at midnight, finishes at midnight. Other call centers may start at 7 in the morning and finish at 7 in the morning. It's a 24-hour shift, and that's what we're trying to evaluate here. You also talked about training. The great thing about this particular schedule is you can quite quickly see here that Michelle Allen is on training, buddying up with who's that? Raymond Cruz within the center. So it gives us a really great visualization of what's happening within the PSAP. And not only does it tell us who's scheduled and when they're scheduled, but we can also see their meal breaks. These green areas that we have on the schedules, this is a meal break. So Emily King is on a meal break between 1 and 2 in the morning. I guess that's an early breakfast, but they are replaced by Robert Robertson. They're filling in the shift so Emily can get that break away from the dispatch desk. But not only do we do it by dispatch desk, we can also filter by person over here. So we can now look at the people. But it does give us a really good view of what's happening within PSAP with all the desks that we have. And this is all configurable. So if you have 10 dispatch desks and 20 call takers and 5 supervisors, that would all be created along with you in the training side of things. So I'm going to move on now. I'm going to click into the admin section. And the reason I want to do that is we want to talk about forecasts. I briefly chatted about forecasts in the first part when we were discussing the donuts and the cookies that we talked about. But here we can actually generate a forecast using the historical information from the 911. That gives us insight to what the calls are coming in. It allows us to plan. I've referred to this in various guises as a staffing profile, a curve, the numbers that we have. This is what allows us to generate the schedules and understand where we need people, specifically where we need people to fill in for tea breaks and lunches, training, or maybe somebody's been subpoenaed to court and they're not available for that particular day. So in my demo environment, I've got this demo forecast. I'm going to quickly walk through the forecast generation just to show you how easy this is. I've got my workspace. This is for the emergency calls. We've got the emergency line, EMS, the fire, law, and another call to take and type in there that we want to look at. But over the last 3 months, I have had all of these call volumes per day. And what we can do is we can generate a forecast based on specific days. So we could choose days out of the historical period, or we can choose the entire week or the entire month that allows us to generate that forecast. And simply put, if I scroll down here to the bottom, I can generate the forecast. It has the ability to generate different types of forecasts. Now, we don't need to worry about that. The reason being is Mac can analyze the data and tell you what forecast model you need to use. Also, you mentioned the forward deployment engineers. Our guys can also help you understand what is the best forecast type for your PSAP. I'm going to use N-week average. Essentially, that's just an average of the 4 weeks that we have within the system. I'm going to save it as a what-if forecast, and this is the name. I'm just going to simply keep it here as forecast for now. And we're going to start, let's say we'll do the start date for the 19th of April, and it'll be for 1 week. And our NINR standards, I think, were 90 and 10. So 90% of calls answered within 10 seconds. We also have what's called unplanned shrinkage. So think of that as nipping up and having to go for a bio break, something that's taken you away from the call taking that wasn't planned. So I'm going to put in there roughly about 12% typically. That's what I've seen in the past. And for today's demo, I'm just going to average the handling time at 340 seconds. Generating the forecast sends this off to the server. It does its magic in the background and allows us to save the forecast. So when I go into my forecast, you now see that I've got this forecast that I've generated. Now you might be asking, why do we need a forecast? Well, if we didn't have a forecast, we wouldn't necessarily have a plan to understand what's happening within the environment. So using the demo forecast that I have, and we'll go for, when is it? Today's the 16th. We're now looking at the coverage graph. What the coverage graph allows us to see is the call volume that's coming in. What is the optimal number of people that we need on the phones taking call takers or dispatch or possibly even supervisors? And it gives us insight to the entire day. And it highlights areas of risk. So we've got a medium area of highlight risk. So we can click on that interval. We can see that we required 12 staff, but we've actually only got 11 physically taking calls. Why is that? Because we've got 2 people on breaks. However, 92% coverage does give us a grade of service of 95% within 10 seconds. So still meeting the standards. And if we drilled into this, we would find that it's our call takers that have the 2 breaks scheduled at that particular time. But there's a lot of information there that we might not necessarily have seen before if we didn't have a forecast. Now, at this stage, Steve, this is when I want to talk about Mac. You can see I've actually been using Mac quite a lot in the last couple of days here. I asked this question yesterday, and it gave me a breakdown of everything that we had within here. So it called out coverage versus forecast. We've got 2,062 calls, 89% calls answered within 20 seconds. Average handle time was 199 seconds. It broke down the day by hour. Let me just see if I can expand that and go back up. So it broke down the day by hour, what our coverage was, what our scheduled staff was, what our surplus was, and what our status. So it tells us if we're good, we're overstaffed, or tight. Similarly, it broke down things like training impacts. So Donna is on training. from 9:50 to 6:45. So it gives you this really great insight and report where, if you had Excel spreadsheets, you might have to look through 4 or 5 different Excel spreadsheets, whereas you can just ask Mac to look at the coverage graph and produce you a report, which you can then provide to your supervisors and your supervisors' supervisors. Down here, it gives us recommendations. So it analyzes and it determines what your next best thing to do should be. So in this case, we've got 10 unfilled positions. We've got priority. It's telling us that maybe we should do some callback shifts, overtime shifts for people. So rather than you having to figure this out for yourself, if you will, it gives you prompts. And you talked about human in the loop earlier, Steve. This is the human in the loop. Consider doing the callbacks. It's not going to automatically do the callbacks for you, but maybe in 6 months' time, when you've had the product and you've built that confidence, it could text your guys in to say, come and do an extra shift for me, that type of thing. And that's one of the key things about Mac, is it's not only just a tool which gives you the information, it actually is agentic AI which prompts you into doing something to solve some of the problems it's identified before they happen. Now, I've got a few more moments, and what I would like to do is just quickly talk about this left-hand menu here. We've got locations. So what we can do is we can specify different sites. In this case, I've got a primary site and a backup site. So you can schedule across those primary sites and backup sites, and you could also plan a disaster recovery. I've been in so many PSAP centers where they have this plan. It sits in a folder somewhere, and if somebody asked what would happen if the primary site got shut down, they would have to go and open this folder and see what happens. This plan could sit inside workforce management and be available for anybody to review, make adjustments to, and improve as time goes on. We also talked about stations. In here, this is where we configure the stations or add the stations. I've got dispatch 1. We can determine if they're required. So a dispatch desk is required, but we might have some overflow or optional desks. As you can see here, we've got down at the bottom. These could be excluded from your typical forecast, but if you had a special event, maybe you're having to police the World Cup this year, you want to include those extra desks in your schedules and also your forecast. I think I've talked too much today, Steve. I've run out of time, I believe. So I'm going to pass back to you on that note.
Thanks, Charlie. Appreciate that. We are taking questions too, so please put in any questions you guys have. We'll make sure to get those at the end here. This is the last slide here, and this is kind of the business case. As I said, workforce management has been table stakes for any call-taking industry in the world besides PSAPs. I don't understand it. I don't get it. PSAPs are the most mission-critical call-taking industry that we have, yet they don't get a piece of software that would vastly improve every single day for them that every other call-taking industry has had as table stakes for 20 to 30 years. So that being said, there is a ton of documentation. You can Google it. This is not made up by any means. These are numbers of your typical 200-seat center for call centers. Again, we have no numbers that we don't have enough numbers to actually be able to say this for PSAPs yet, but the logical conclusion is that it's going to be pretty similar. So as you can see, these are pretty aggressive. And the one I like to point out is the bottom. That is for people that aren't even trained on this yet. That is just implementing the system and letting it run from day one. You're going to see those type of numbers. So really a game changer and something that PSAP should have had for a long time. So exciting stuff with this. And I believe that brings us to the end, Lotta, or do we have one more slide?
Could I just interrupt there? You talked about that last number, that 20% productivity improvements for first-time WFM users. Continuity WFM as a platform, you kind of touched on it there, Steve. The productivity improvements are seen through schedule creation, automated breaks creation, the automated approval of leave, that type of thing. You may do that today, but it may take a couple of hours or so. If you have a couple of hours for each supervisor in a week, you're saving 10, 15 hours quite easily. It's very straightforward. And that number, I've seen that delivered and better in multiple call centers in my time when delivering WFM solutions.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, thank you both, Steve and Charlie. So now let's open it up. So as Steve mentioned, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat or use the Q&A panel, and we'll get to as many as we can. As I can see, we already got some. So the first one is, can WFM pull live call data directly from our CAD or telephony system?
Yes. So I'll take that, Charlie, and then let you
Okay.
add on. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we've been in public safety for over 30 years. So we have relationships with all the call taking vendors or call handling vendors, Modo, Axum, Intrado, as well as all the CAD vendors. We have some integrations already, and we are working with some pilots with some of our customers right now to build out those integrations. But the more integrated we are within the PSAP, the better this is going to work, obviously. So the more information and data we can grab in real time, the better the predictive scheduling and forecasting can work. And then obviously Mac, the agent, the more information he has within your PSAP, the more he can assist you with.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of touched on that on the demo, Steve. It's almost invisible, but yes, the data just appears in the contributed WFM, and that data is imperative to producing that forecast and that predictive scheduling, as you talked about. I also forgot to say, sorry, you can upload manual data as well if you have it. So it does give us the option to do that as well.
Nice, thank you, Charlie. And the second one is, does it integrate with payroll?
Yes. Another popular question. We aren't seeing it as common as the CAD or call handling, but we have a few pilots that wanted to do payroll, mostly around vacation, which is very important for this product. So absolutely, we're getting going with that. Most payroll companies have open APIs, so it's fairly easy. Again, this is all done at the beginning during the implementation. Sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, no, I was just going to echo what you said there. I've seen PSAPs use paper forms for overtime to confirm that overtime was completed, and then somebody has to manually key that into another system. We can remove all that manual keying and be really precise on who has worked when and for how long, and that's why the payroll compliance is such a powerful tool as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Charlie and Steve, and thank you all for joining us today. Also, I wanted to say, if we didn't get to your question, we'll be following up with you individually. And if you want to see a live demo, please reach out to us directly on LinkedIn or at wilmactech.com. Also, we have one more session coming up in the WFM Insider series, and it builds on another key outcome of workforce management in PSAPs. That would be the overtime optimization. So the third webinar in our series is scheduled in 2 weeks for April 30th at 11 a.m. The registration link is going into the chat right now, and it will be also in your follow-up email. So we hope to see you on the April 30th. And again, thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.